Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It happened on a Friday night, the kind that should have been simple, peaceful. We were at Olive Garden, celebrating our anniversary. Or at least, I thought we were. The place smelled like garlic and wine, families laughing all around. And for a moment, everything felt almost normal. Until she looked past me, her eyes caught something across the room, and her entire face changed. Her name was Laura, my wife. 15 years together, 2 kids, a house we built from nothing. But that night, she looked like she didn't even know me. She smiled, not at me, but at someone behind me. Then, without a word, she stood up, picked up her glass, and said she'd be right back. I watched her walk across the restaurant and sit down at another table with a man I'd never seen before. I remember every detail. The way she laughed, the way she leaned in, how she touched her hair. The waiter came by and asked if everything was okay. I just nodded, but inside, everything was collapsing. 15 minutes passed. She didn't come back. People were starting to notice. Whispers, side glances. I sat there alone, staring at her empty chair, wondering if I was dreaming. Then it happened. A woman from a nearby booth walked over. She looked maybe early 40s, confident, with a calm presence that cut through the noise. She said quietly, "You shouldn't let her make you feel invisible." That was all. Then she sat down across from me, like she'd been waiting for that moment all her life. I didn't answer. I just watched Laura from across the room, still laughing, still pretending I wasn't there. The woman glanced back at her too, then turned to me and said, "You know, I've seen this scene before. You'd be surprised how fast masks fall when no one claps for them anymore." There was something in her tone, not pity, not interest, just truth. It hit harder than anything Laura could have said. The stranger introduced herself, Rachel. She told me she'd been where I was once, and that watching Laura from the outside, she could already tell how it would end. I didn't believe her at first, but when Laura finally came back to the table, eyes full of fake apologies, I looked at her differently. The night that was supposed to celebrate our marriage became the night I stopped being blind to it. By the time the check came, Rachel was gone. But her words stayed, sharp, cold, and strangely freeing. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't losing a wife. I was losing an illusion. And maybe that was the best thing that could have happened to me. The drive home that night was quieter than any silence I'd ever known. Laura scrolled on her iPhone the whole way, pretending nothing had happened. I didn't ask about the man. I didn't need to. Whatever explanation she might have had would have been another performance. And I was done being her audience. When we got home, she tossed her purse on the counter and said she was tired. She didn't notice the way I watched her, not with anger, but with a calm she didn't recognize. I think that's what scared her most. For the first time, I didn't react. I went out to the garage, sat in the Ford F-150, and just stared at the steering wheel for a long time. That woman's words from Olive Garden kept echoing in my head. You'd be surprised how fast masks fall when no one claps for them anymore. I didn't even know her, but somehow, she'd seen everything that night clearer than I had in years. The next morning, Laura acted like the night never happened. She made coffee, turned on Netflix, and started talking about grocery shopping at Target later. It was unsettling how easily she slipped back into routine. I went along with it, not because I forgave her, but because I wanted to observe, to see who she really was when she thought I wasn't watching. Later that afternoon, I went with her to Target. Watching her walk through the aisles, pretending to care about the color of throw pillows, I realized how little of her life involved me anymore. Every move felt rehearsed, every smile empty. I wasn't angry, I was awake. When we got home, I checked my phone. There was a text from an unknown number. It was Rachel. I hadn't given her my contact, but somehow she'd found it. The message was simple: don't react. Observe. That's how you win. I stared at those words for a long time. I didn't know what game she thought I was playing, but something inside me shifted. I stopped trying to fix anything. I stopped trying to reach her. That night, when Laura left her phone face up on the table, I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. The truth always reveals itself when you stop searching for it. Before bed, she asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, but in my head, I was already somewhere else, in that quiet place Rachel had shown me. The space between reaction and control. And for the first time, I realized that silence could be power. Over the next few days, something in me changed. I wasn't pretending anymore. I stopped asking her where she was going, stopped waiting for explanations, stopped reaching for a version of us that didn't exist. The silence between us stretched like glass, clear, fragile, and sharp. Laura seemed confused by it. She'd look at me, searching for some hint of emotion to grab onto. But I'd already stepped out of the part she'd written for me. On Thursday night, we had dinner at home. She was scrolling through her phone again, laughing at messages she tried to hide by tilting the screen. I didn't ask who it was. I just kept eating. She must have felt my indifference because after a few minutes, she put the phone down and asked why I was being so quiet. I told her I was just thinking. She asked if it was about the other night. I said it didn't matter anymore. And the look on her face, that flash of uncertainty, told me everything I needed to know. Later that evening, after she went to bed, I checked my messages. Rachel had sent another text. The less you say, the more she reveals. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but she was right. The more I pulled back, the more Laura's mask cracked. She started leaving earlier for work, coming home later, overcompensating with sudden bursts of affection that felt rehearsed. One night, while she was in the shower, her iPhone lit up on the counter. A message preview flashed, a man's name, followed by words that erased any last trace of denial. Can't stop thinking about last night. I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. I just turned off the screen and went out to the backyard. It was quiet out there. The air smelled like rain. I sat down and realized something strange. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt free. Free from guessing, from trying to fix what she'd already decided to break. When she came out later, she saw me sitting there and asked what I was doing. I told her I was just getting some air. She smiled, walked back inside, and never noticed that something irreversible had shifted. That night, lying beside her, I finally stopped caring whether she lied or told the truth. I was already moving, not physically yet, but mentally, quietly preparing to disappear without a sound. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Laura was still asleep, phone face down beside her on the nightstand. I got dressed quietly, grabbed my keys, and left the house without a sound. The Ford F-150 started softly, the dashboard glow lighting the dark driveway. I didn't have a destination. I just drove. Miles of empty highway, quiet, peaceful. It was the first time in years I'd felt like I could breathe. I stopped at a small Dunkin' on the edge of town and sat by the window with a coffee, watching strangers pass. Ordinary people. No pretense, no secrets. I wondered when exactly I'd stopped living like that, when I'd traded peace for performance. The sun came up slowly, spilling light across the parking lot, and in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg or expose her. I was going to do what she'd never expect, disappear quietly and completely. When I got home, she was already dressed for work. She asked where I'd gone so early, pretending not to sound suspicious. I told her I just needed air. She smiled like she believed it, kissed me on the cheek, and walked out. As soon as the door closed, I started preparing. I didn't pack a suitcase. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I moved little by little, clothes to the truck, documents in a folder, my savings transferred to a separate account. I made sure every step was invisible. She wouldn't realize anything until I was already gone. That evening, Rachel texted again. When you vanish, make it clean. No goodbyes. I didn't reply, but the word stayed with me. It wasn't advice, it was confirmation. She'd seen this story before, maybe even lived it. And she knew that sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's strategy. By the weekend, everything was in place. Laura still had no idea. She even suggested dinner out, maybe Olive Garden again. The irony made me smile. I agreed. At the restaurant, she looked perfect, rehearsed, radiant. She talked about plans, vacations, the future, all with that same charm that used to blind me. But sitting across from her, I realized how transparent it all was now. I wasn't angry. I was detached. When the waiter brought the check, I paid, thanked her for the evening, and told her I had something to take care of early tomorrow. She nodded, kissed me goodnight, and went upstairs first. By the time she woke up the next morning, my side of the closet was empty and my truck was gone. When I left that morning, I didn't look back. I drove until the city disappeared behind me and the roads turned quiet. I rented a small cabin near the lake, paid in cash, and shut my phone off. The silence was strange at first, but it wasn't empty. It was clean. Every sound I heard was real again. The wind in the trees, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my own breathing. It felt like my life had gone from static to clarity. By noon, she must have noticed. Maybe she woke up and saw the empty space in the closet. Maybe she called, texted, checked my location, only to realize I'd blocked her on everything. I didn't need to see the messages to know what they'd say. Shock first, then anger, then guilt. All of it predictable, all of it too late. That afternoon, I went into town, stopped by Walmart for groceries, and sat in the parking lot for a long time. Watching people shop for their everyday lives reminded me how far I'd drifted from mine. I wasn't running away, I was reclaiming it. I bought a notebook, a cheap pen, and started writing. Not about her, not about what she'd done, about me. About how I'd let myself become someone easy to leave. A few days passed before she finally found a way to reach me. An email. Short. "I don't understand why you left like that." That line made me laugh, quiet and bitter. She didn't understand because in her world, control was everything. She couldn't grasp the idea that walking away silently was the loudest thing I'd ever done. I didn't reply. Then, a week later, another email came. No anger this time, just confusion. "People are asking questions. Please talk to me." Still, I said nothing. The more I stayed quiet, the faster her image began to crumble. Friends stopped defending her, stories started spreading. She'd built her reputation on control and charm, and now both were slipping through her hands. Every night, I'd sit by the lake with a coffee from Dunkin', watching the reflection of the moon ripple on the water. I thought about Rachel's words, "Don't react. Observe." That's exactly what I was doing, watching the fallout from a distance, untouched. Laura thought she could destroy me in silence. What she never realized was that silence was where I learned to rebuild. By the second week, the silence had become a weapon sharper than any word I could have said. She kept trying to reach me. Emails, voicemails, even a letter she mailed to my office, not realizing I'd already resigned. Each message was more desperate than the last. She wasn't angry anymore. She was scared, not of losing me, but of what people would think now that she'd lost control of the story. I spent my mornings running along the lake, coffee from Dunkin' in hand, and my evenings writing in that Walmart notebook. I wrote about peace, about distance, about how strange it felt to not be needed. I didn't miss her. I missed who I was before her lies turned everything into noise. For the first time, I could think clearly. Every decision I made came from calm, not emotion. Then one afternoon, while scrolling through my prepaid phone, I saw a text from an unknown number. It was Rachel. "She's looking for you," it said. But not because she cares, because she can't stand being ignored. I didn't ask how she knew that. Rachel had a way of seeing through people, of understanding patterns that others didn't. She added, "Let her chase ghosts. You're not one of them anymore." That night, I checked Laura's social media out of curiosity. Her photos looked staged, filtered, dinners alone, empty smiles, captions about healing and moving forward. The comments were few, the sympathy hollow. Her once perfect image was dissolving, just like her confidence. It wasn't my doing. It was the natural result of who she was when no one was there to believe her act. A week later, I saw her name pop up on my phone again. Different number this time. The message was short. "Please, just tell me what you want from me." I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I realized she still didn't understand the truth. I didn't want anything. That was what freedom meant. I turned off the phone and stepped outside. The air was cold, clean. Somewhere behind me, the life I'd left was crumbling, and for once, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. I'd spent years begging her to see me. Now, she was the one staring into silence, waiting for an answer that would never come. And that, I realized, was the real ending. Not the day I left, but the day I stopped being available for her chaos. 3 weeks passed before she finally found out where I was. I don't know how. Maybe a mutual friend slipped, or maybe she followed a bank record I forgot to close. Either way, one evening I looked out the cabin window and saw her Toyota Camry pull into the gravel driveway. My heart didn't race. I didn't panic. I just stood there, watching the dust settle around her car. She got out slowly, like she wasn't sure if I'd open the door or disappear again. When she knocked, I waited before answering. Her voice sounded small. "Mark, please." I opened the door, not to let her in, but to end the guessing. She looked different. No makeup, hair pulled back, exhaustion written all over her. For the first time in years, she didn't look like she was performing. She said she'd been losing sleep, that she didn't recognize the person she'd become, that she wanted to make things right. I didn't interrupt. I just listened, standing there in the doorway. She started to cry, said she'd ruined everything, that she missed me, that she couldn't stand the silence anymore. That line made me pause, because the silence she was talking about was the same one she used to punish me with. Only now, it was punishing her. I told her I wasn't angry, but I wasn't the same man she left sitting alone at Olive Garden either. I said I needed peace, not closure. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, only a chance to talk. I told her we were talking right now. The look in her eyes changed, not shock, not anger, just realization. She understood that I was no longer reachable in the way she wanted. She asked if I'd met someone else. I said no. Then she asked if I ever thought about what we used to have. I said I did, but not the way she hoped. I thought about how I'd built my life around someone who never saw me until I disappeared. After a long silence, she whispered, "You're not coming back, are you?" I told her that even if I did, it wouldn't be to the same place, because that version of us doesn't exist anymore. She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes, and said, "I get it now." When she left, she didn't look back. And as her car disappeared down the road, I felt something settle inside me. Not revenge, not victory, but peace. The kind that only comes when you stop needing to be understood. After she left the cabin, the quiet returned, but it was different this time. It wasn't heavy anymore. It didn't feel like isolation. It felt earned. I sat on the porch that night, watching the reflection of the moon on the lake, and realized how much of my life I'd spent trying to fix what didn't want to be repaired. There's a strange calm that comes when you finally stop chasing explanations. You stop wanting them because you already know the truth. For the next few days, I focused on simple things. Fixing the loose step on the porch. Cooking breakfast instead of grabbing takeout. I started running again, writing again, thinking again. The life that used to revolve around her was slowly finding its own rhythm. Sometimes I'd still check my phone out of habit, but there was nothing. And that emptiness didn't hurt, it grounded me. Then, one afternoon, I got an email. It wasn't from her directly, but from one of our mutual friends, Sarah. She said Laura had left town, sold her car, took a leave from work, said she needed to start over. No explanation, no plan, just gone. I read it twice, waiting for some reaction that never came. There was no satisfaction, no relief, just a quiet acknowledgement that she was finally feeling what I'd felt months before. Lost, unseen, unsure. Later that evening, I went into town for groceries at Walmart. It was busy, full of normal people doing normal things. Families laughing, couples arguing softly over cereal brands. For years, I used to feel invisible in moments like that, like I was outside looking in. But that night, I didn't. I felt present, real, steady, like the silence I once feared had become the proof of my survival. When I got back to the cabin, I found something taped to the door, a small envelope. Inside, there was a single note. No signature, just her handwriting. "Thank you for teaching me what silence feels like. I hope someday it brings me peace too." I sat there for a long time, holding that note. I didn't know where she was or what she was doing, but I knew one thing for certain. She finally understood the difference between loneliness and solitude. I folded the note, placed it in my notebook, and closed it. The story that began at that restaurant had come full circle. She had walked away once to feel powerful, and now, walking away was the only thing that finally gave me mine. Weeks passed after that note. The world around me started to feel alive again. I noticed small things I used to ignore. The sound of the rain on the cabin roof, the smell of morning coffee, the quiet hum of the Ford F-150 when I drove into town. Everything slowed down, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. I was just still. One morning, I went to Dunkin' for coffee and saw Rachel sitting outside. Same calm presence, same steady gaze. It had been months since Olive Garden, yet it felt like no time had passed. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said she knew I'd get here eventually. I asked what she meant, and she said, "The point where you stop surviving her and start becoming yourself again." We talked for a while, not about Laura, but about silence, forgiveness, and how sometimes peace isn't found in closure, but in acceptance. She told me she'd once gone through the same thing, different names, same patterns. Said that women like Laura don't destroy men. They expose the parts that were already weak. It sounded harsh, but she was right. When I got back to the cabin that evening, I reread Laura's note. It didn't hurt anymore. It just felt distant, like a story that happened to someone else. I thought about replying, maybe sending something kind, but decided against it. She needed the silence more than she needed my words. A few days later, Sarah texted again. Laura had reached out to her, saying she was trying to make amends. She'd started volunteering, seeing a therapist, rebuilding quietly. I didn't know if that was true or another story for sympathy, but for once, it didn't matter. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace, and I already had it. That night, I took a drive to the overlook near the lake, the same spot where I'd sat alone when I first left her. The water reflected the sky perfectly, the air still and cold. I realized that my silence hadn't been about punishing her. It had been about freeing myself. I thought about how Rachel was right. That silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. It's what's left when the noise finally burns itself out. And maybe, just maybe, that's what love is supposed to look like after it ends. Not chaos, not closure, but calm. It was early autumn when I saw her again. Not planned, not dramatic, just a quiet intersection of two lives that had once been tangled and torn. I was in town, picking up supplies at Walmart, when I heard a voice behind me say my name. I turned, and there she was. Laura. She looked different. No designer clothes, no heavy makeup, just a soft sweater, jeans, and eyes that had finally stopped searching for attention. There was something calm about her now, like life had finally humbled her. She smiled, hesitant, and said she didn't expect to see me. I told her I hadn't expected it either. The moment hung there, quiet, heavy but not painful. She said she'd been working in another city, rebuilding. She didn't say much about the past, and I didn't ask. Instead, she said she wanted to thank me. I asked what for. She said, for not fighting back, for letting the silence do what words never could. I didn't know what to say to that. I just nodded. We ended up walking outside together. The parking lot was nearly empty, the air cool and golden with the first hints of fall. She said she finally understood what I'd meant when I told her peace mattered more than closure. That she'd tried to fill the silence with noise, new people, new distractions, but nothing worked until she stopped running. I listened. There was no bitterness left in her voice, just quiet acceptance. Before we said goodbye, she looked at me and asked if I ever thought we could have made it work if things had gone differently. I told her maybe, but only if we'd both learned to listen before it was too late. She smiled faintly, said she hoped I was happy now, and turned to leave. As she walked away, I felt something shift inside me. Not regret, not sadness, just understanding. What happened between us wasn't failure, it was evolution. We'd both had to lose each other to find ourselves. Later that night, I drove back to the cabin, stopped by Dunkin' for coffee, and watched the sky fade into twilight. The world was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full, balanced, and I realized the truth I'd been chasing all along. Peace isn't found in someone else's apology. It's found in the silence you choose for yourself, and the strength to stay in it, no matter who comes back looking. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.